wants to know how to get into the promise that God has positioned each one of you for. Visions, dreams, destiny, the things that he has spoken to your heart. And he wants to give you some keys tonight to step into a new realm of your promised land. Well, why would tonight be different than any other night? Well, let's talk a little bit about the Hebrew calendar, because last night at sundown, the Hebrew calendar turned over to the month of Av. That word Av means father. All right? So actually, today is actually the first day of the Hebrew month of Av. It can also be referred to as Menachem Av, or the consoler father, or the comforter father. That's the month that we have entered into. It is the 5th month on the religious calendar, which starts at Passover, and it is the 11th month on the civil calendar, which starts at Rosh Hashanah. So we are getting close to the end of the Hebrew calendar year, and we will be seeing that turnover at Rosh Hashanah here in September, when we're going to enter another year. Now, when we enter into new months, God always brings new and fresh revelation. Well, he really just began to speak to me intently about how he wants to take people into their place of promise, but they're going to need to release some things to him. And in that release, it is going to be difficult. It's not going to be easy. Not going to be easy, okay? But as you are invited to come into a new place with him, and there are giants in that land. There are fears that you have. There are anxieties. There are concerns. And you can make a long list of what they might be. But as God is nudging you to step into that place, those things are going to come to the surface, and they are going to scream rather loudly. And they're going to be an obstacle for you to get into the place that God is taking you. See, why would God be doing that this month? Because it's not much longer. It's only about, and I haven't mapped it specifically, but I mean probably like 7 weeks or so until the calendar turns over. So this would be the time that God would begin to start adjusting things in our life so that we can start fresh in the fall. Now listen, no matter what has happened in our universe, no matter the shifting with the pandemic, or whatever other things are taking place that might be disturbing to you, the bottom line is that when God's new year starts, he still has expectations for what's going to happen. And our God is always a God that moves forward. I enjoyed Pastor Dina's tithe message because she said, move, move, move. And yes, when God says it's time to start stepping into the promised land, it's time to start restructuring, setting up some new things, making some changes, doing what's necessary in order to have what is before you begin to start to flourish and get a good jump start. And so it's a time to begin to reevaluate, listen to God, and to take some leaps of faith. Now, in this month of Av, and actually right now, and this has been going on for a few weeks in Israel, and there's another week of this until the 9th of Av, which is next week, Wednesday, Thursday time frame. There is a mourning time that takes place in Israel. And it takes place because it was during this time that Moses broke the tablets, because the people had begun to worship false idols. They worshipped the golden calf that they had made out of the things that God had given them. And that was at the beginning of the 3 weeks, which happened a couple of weeks ago. Okay, that's when that started. Then we find that breaches, there's been walls. Historically, there were broken walls in Jerusalem. The temples were destroyed during that time. Well, one of the other travesties of these 3 weeks where there's mourning in Israel is the fact that the Israelites were invited to go into the promised land. And we all know the story from Numbers chapter 13 and 14. I'm going to talk about that tonight. They were invited to go into the promised land, but they chose not to go. And today, they still mourn the fact that if they had made the right choice, that they wouldn't have had to spend 40 years in the wilderness. Because it was after this encounter with God that he said to them, well, y'all people ain't going anywhere. And actually, he was a little more angry than that. And again, Moses, with his great favor, had to speak to the Lord and bring him to a place of not killing the whole crew, but simply telling God, you are the God of loving kindness, you are the God of mercy, and Lord, be who you are to these people. As the Lord was getting upset with them, just like he was a few weeks before when they were messing with the golden calf. So let's go into Numbers chapter 13 and 14, because there are keys here to your promised land. And when we look at the Hebrew calendar and we see what's taking place every single year at the same time, no matter what's going on in the universe, God shifts things, okay? There's literally a supernatural shift that takes place to line us up with the Hebrew calendar. Okay, I'm going to repeat that again. There's a supernatural shift that happens in the universe to line God's people up with his word, because his word is showing chronologically what happens through the Hebrew calendar. The Hebrew calendar shows chronological order of what is taking place in the universe. Right now, God is getting people ready to step into their promise. And he doesn't want you to make the same mistake this year that you might have made last year, and you could still be going around the mountain because last year he offered it to you, but you couldn't make it in. And so now he's going to offer it again. All right? So this is prophetic. I'm talking to you prophetically from the calendar and what I know God is doing. Now listen, it doesn't matter that we have a pandemic going on outside. That doesn't change the fact that the Hebrew calendar stays the same and that you are coming into your place of promise. Okay? There are circumstances and situations you may have had great loss. There may have been disappointment. Whatever it is, financial issues, that still doesn't change the fact that God is calling you to begin to start to take some steps to move. And I believe that you're going to begin to start experiencing that rather rapidly. Okay, if you haven't already been getting a nudge, you're going to start getting some nudges here. And so I want you to be prepared, because there's a way for you to go into this promised land that is going to be with great faith. So, we've entered into the month of Av, and we are faced with Numbers chapter 13. Let's talk about Numbers chapter 13, all right? We're going to go to verses 26 through 29, okay? So we already know that God gives an instruction. He says, I want you to go on over and take a look at the land. He goes, I want you to see the people that are over there. Are they strong, weak, few, many? What kind of land do they live in? Is it good, bad? How's the soil? Is it fertile? Is it poor? What kind of trees are there? And bring back some of the fruit of the land. Now, this is at the beginning of Numbers, okay? Then, the word says that they go over there and they bring back some fruit. And they're so happy with this great, beautiful fruit that they see. There's a report that, wow, this truly is the promised land. Now, I'm going to stop right here and I'm going to tell you something. When you go to Israel, if you've ever been to Israel, it's divided now differently than it used to be in the past when the Word of God was written. But nonetheless, Israel is a great place of fertile soil. You can grow almost every fruit you can imagine simply based on the climate changes and the soil that is in Israel. Okay, so it really does represent the goodness of God. Okay? Now, God gave them an instruction to go over there and to check it out and to come back because he wanted them to come back saying, my God, look how awesome you are. Did you really want me to go, want all of us to go to such a beautiful place? But instead, though they came back with the fruit and said, this is good, they had a but with their statement. And how many times does God invite you to go somewhere? And he says, I want you to be in this place. And he gives you a picture, he gives you an image, and he says, this is where I want you to be. And you say, my God, that's so beautiful, that's so amazing. Do you really want that for me? That totally reflects who you are. But, God, did you not know? I don't have no money to go to that place. Or, don't you know? Have you not seen what awaits me if I do go there? Those people aren't going to like me. Or whatever your excuse is, okay? Every time God tries to invite us to go to another place with him, the enemy is always right there to show us why we can't have it. He's right there to show us why we can't have it. So he did the same thing with the Israelites. So let's go to Numbers chapter 13, verses 26 through 29. So they came back to Moses and Aaron and the whole Israelite community at Kadesh in the desert of Paran. And there they reported to them in the whole assembly and showed them the fruit of the land. They gave Moses this account. We went into the land to which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here's the fruit. But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites live in the Negev. The Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live near the sea and along the Jordan. So they go over and they come back saying this is good, but they come back saying there's no way we can go to this land. Oh. And let me tell you what that does to the heart of God. Now let me just explain this to you. When God invites you to go into your promised land place for your personal destiny, for what it is that he has for you, you don't go with the buts. And let me tell you why. Because the buts are immediately a doubt that tells God you don't believe that he could get you into the place that he's asked you to be.
Would you like to learn how to walk in signs, miracles, and wonders? How to experience the supernatural every day of your life? How about carrying out the assignment or plan that God has for you and learning to stay seated with Christ in heavenly places? If your heart is crying out for this, then you want the School of the Supernatural. Go to my website at CandiceSmithyman.com and click the link for the School of the Supernatural. It will take you into another page where I want you to choose the Soul Transformation course. It's a foundational course in learning to understand who you are in Christ and how to live victoriously. We teach you about the transformation of the soul so that you can be ready to walk in signs, miracles, and wonders. I know God's been speaking to you about prophecy, about being a seer prophet, about beginning to step into the supernatural of impartation and a whole lot of other miracles. This can be you, but you need a good foundation, and that's the School of the Supernatural. Go to my website at CandiceSmithman.com to find out more how you can get started today.
The buts say, God, thank you for inviting me, but you, God, are not good enough to get me there. I know we think we're saying, oh Lord, forgive me, I'm so small and meek. There's no way that I can get into that place. But that's not what we're saying to the ears of the Father. The ears of the Father don't hear that. He knows we're small and meek. If he's going to invite us to go into this place, he knows that he's got to carry us there. He's not questioning what his job is in this process. But we question who he is in this process. That does not make him happy. And it did not in Numbers 13 and 14. Which is why the Jews mourn today. because they realized this after they got back and said, but you don't know what we've got to face. Then they realized they offended God. They didn't know it before going over there. See, now this is why I'm telling you how important this is, okay? Because now you'll know when you're offending God. And we offend God when we don't stand on who God is, and we don't stand on what he told us and where he's going to take us. He takes offense to that. Why? Because it challenges his character, which never changes. He is the God of love. He is the God of mercy. He is the God that when he says, you will go here, and you surrender to what he says, and you go no matter what you face, then you will receive what it is that he promised you, but he will get the glory because he took you to the place that he told you to go. So, we are small and meek. We are ignorant at many times. He knows this about us. He knows this about his kids. This does not throw him off. He was not thrown off by them. But the reason the word shows us his disappointment and his anger is so that we can learn, and so the Israelites now have learned, which is why they mourn every year over this, is because they have learned indeed that who God says he is one to be worshiped and one to be credited with truth. If God said it, then God's going to make it happen. So they looked at themselves. And listen, this is human nature. We always look at ourselves. Why? Because of what happened at the fall of man. Our focus is not on God. Our focus is on ourselves. This is how we function now. We love to have God come into our world. But God has a world for you that he wants to take you to. And so this is a teaching that gets you out of self. It says, dream, have desire, step into the place of promise, but when God says go, don't hold back and don't give him a but. So they did that. But there were two guys who didn't. Those two guys were Joshua and Caleb. And in verse 30, Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, we should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. Now, he didn't mean that he could do it without God. He believed what God said, and so he credited that to himself. He took on the identity of who God is, and we can make this happen. Now listen, I'm talking to you right now. When you take on your identity in Christ, when you take on who you are in him, when you take on knowing his goodness and trusting him, committing your way to him, then you position yourself with power to be able to take the land before you. It gives God glory to take the meek and the small and give them who he is, and now says, go. Caleb grabbed a hold of that. So did Joshua. Verse 31 says, but the man who had gone up with him said, we can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are. Here's the naysayer, the negativity. Exactly what Sherry was sharing with us. God told Sherry to put in that application. And for her, that was part of her promised land. This was going to be the first time in how many years was she going to get the opportunity to do something that she never would have been given the opportunity to do because of sin in her life. Yet she listened to the Lord. But the people around her said, oh no, boy, that land is too big for you, Sherry. If you stick that thing in there, they're going to say no to you. But she kept hearing the voice of the Lord, and she took the risk, believing in God, and miraculously, she's now positioned in a place of promise that she wasn't before. Now, what if she had listened to all the bad reports around her? She'd go to the desert, and let me tell you, you may not go to the desert for 40 years, but if you go to the desert for 1 year, you're going to cry the entire time that you didn't do what you should do. That may be enough discipline for you. For the whole Israelite community, it was 40 years. Bless them. Let us learn faster than they do because we have the word and we've seen the mistakes that they've made, so we can learn off of that. So, we have the naysayer and the naysayers. And the naysayers continue to say, the land we explore devours those living in it. All the people we saw there of great size. We saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seem like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we look the same to them. Whoa. These people have totally forgotten that their God parted the Red Sea to take them into the promised land. Like they just totally forgot. And you know what, folks? We do that. We'll say, well, God did it once, but he won't do it twice. Come on. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Whew, I got through that one. God gave me a miracle there, but he ain't going to do it another time. Or that was good. I'll write that in my journal, but he's not going to do it again. Now listen, folks. This is the most important thing about this message. If my God will do it once, he'll keep doing it. Why? Because it's part of who he is. It has nothing to do with you. See, we got to take the focus off of this. See, if God will do it for you once, he'll keep doing it for you. But all he's trying to get you to do is believe that he will keep doing it for you. See, it takes a lot for us to believe. See, we're so weak-minded that we'll say, I got through that one. What a miracle. But there's no way it's going to happen again because we haven't yet stepped into who we are in him and the power that he's given us based on who he is. We have yet to cross into that promised land. See, they missed the land that they stepped on because they missed it in their heart. If you want to take the land before you that you're going to step into, you got to first take it in your soul. You got to first know in your soul the truth that he causes all things for the good because that's who he is and he cannot change. Then he will cause you to go to next places in him over and over again because it pleases him to show you the greatness that he is. See, our dad sits on a throne and he is entirely happy to have his children come worship him so that he can bless them with his presence because he knows that that's the only food that will ever change them. Jesus said, my food is to do the will of him who sent me. He meant I want to be in the presence of my Father all the time, and being separated from him is the worst thing to me. And it is the worst thing to us. And so you have to know your Father. He loves you so much that he wants you to be with him all the time. And he wants to keep blessing you and giving you gifts and being in your life in such a way. Yes, he disciplines, but he always disciplines for the good, and you always get a blessing because of the discipline. Now, here's the thing. When God comes to discipline you, you never want to get broken in the wrong place by the discipline. See, God will come and discipline. But when we get broken in the wrong place, and that's the place where we cover ourselves with pride, then he keeps saying, come on, let's do this again, let's try this again, because you yet don't know who I am, and you yet don't know what I've done. But we get broken in the right place. We get humble immediately, and we fall to our knees, and we weep before him, but he lifts our head. And he causes our righteousness to shine like the noonday sun. Get up, rise up, and keep going. See, that's the kind of dad that we serve. And that's the kind of dad that they knew at periods of time. But in this moment, they have forgotten. So, the bad reports came, and the two good reports came. So now, let's go to Numbers chapter 14. So, when the spies said that it was a bad thing because the Nephilim were there and all of the giants were there, and the two said, no, that's not the truth. The truth is we can do this because they knew they were going to be doing it with God. Let me tell you what happened to the people. The word says in Numbers chapter 14, verse 1, that night all the members of the community raised their voices and wept aloud. Now, What this means is immediately they were faced with the reality that they were not going to step into this place because the bad report had become truth to them. So they started weeping. I believe they also wept from the depths of their soul because they knew that God was good and they were believing a bad report. See, the report that they believed was actually a report about God. The report had nothing to do with the giants. Come on, listen to what I'm saying. I need you to listen to what I'm saying. See, there's bad reports that you're getting, but actually they're bad reports against your father and not even bad reports against your circumstance or your situation or the land. This is just a bad word about God. And see, he takes responsibility for what's said about him. So his children started to weep because the report was bad about him. What about my father? Isn't he going to take me over there? He pulled us out of Egypt to take us where? Where? To the promised land, and now we can't go? How many people are speaking in your ear and they're giving you a bad report about God? But it's identified very secretively in a way that it's a bad report about where he's taking you. Oh, you don't want to go over there. You don't know what you're going to face if you get there. But God has told you to go. God has told you that's your promise. God has told you that's where you'll bring him glory if you go there. And that he will take you into that place. But instead, the devil sends somebody to give you a bad report about your circumstance and about your land. It's really a bad report about God. Folks, this is what you need to do when you get those bad reports, is that's where you need to say, no, not my God. He told me I'm going to that land, and I'm standing on that in the name of Jesus, because he is a good God, and he will take me there. Now, our whole body will weep in pain when we believe the report that is bad that comes from somebody who doubts, who fears, who's living in a place, but yet providing you with information you don't need to have because they don't have the faith to go where you're going.